the man.
John Dadian is here.
Political analyst John Dadian. He's going to break what we just saw down a little bit. We're also going to talk about what defines 2011 politically on a whole. But after seeing that story, let's talk about Newt Gingrich, because obviously that story kind of talking a little bit more about Mitt Romney's surge. But really, in the last month, we've been paying more attention to Newt Gingrich. 6 months ago, he wasn't even considered a frontrunner, and now he is.
That's absolutely right. So there's absolutely a Gingrich surge. I mean, he really is looking very strong. Keep in mind that, we're coming to the end of December. January 3rd is Iowa, then the 10th is New Hampshire. So we're basically in the season right now. Here's the interesting point. Clearly, Gingrich, I think surge is an appropriate word for him. But when they talk about a Romney surge, he's come up a couple points. But more specifically, the criticism on Romney is that he's hit his ceiling. He's hitting that 25, 26, 27%. And Gingrich is still on the upswing. So that's the interesting thing to watch, to see if there is a ceiling, especially in the first two early races.
So do we look at them as maybe a possible ticket, or do we see an outsider coming in like Ron Paul or Michelle Bachmann and having one of those two gentlemen be the presidential nominee?
I think you see those two as a strong possible ticket, absolutely.
Okay.
So, but clearly several of the other candidates are trying for vice president right now.
Yeah.
And that'll obviously, I'm sure it'll change 50 times before we actually are covering it, right? Let's talk about President Obama right now and his approval rating, or I guess I should say more his disapproval rating. What do you see happening right now with our president?
No, I don't remember a president, certainly not in my lifetime, that's been at this point in the race, in the high 30s as far as approval. That is as low as you really can go.
So that's the approval rating.
That's the approval, and then the disapproval rating is very high. But more specifically, so you do want to look at those aggregate numbers, but more specifically, where he's really losing is where should be his strengths, or certainly where his strengths in this last campaign, the younger voters and the independent voters. Those are the two groups that are right now in the polling is leaving him in droves. If that continues, he has a very hard time winning.
Okay.
Let's get to the bold marks for this year in terms of politics. The big stories. We'll start with the Gifford shooting in Tucson. Big story.
That would be similar to, especially with my background in politics, one of those that you'll always remember where you were at. I remember, on TV getting ready to watch football games, et cetera, and they came on with it, and I just sat in my chair for half hour just waiting for an update because I'm a former political aide, and one of our political aides actually died in that shooting. It's just stunning. So that actually will be a story for years to come in the sense that it changed how Congress, the security increased, et cetera.
It did, and I mean, what do you think, candidates out there or people and members of Congress, members of the Senate took away from that?
Well, again, Abraham Lincoln was the first president assassinated. In our open democratic society, you're going to always have that risk, okay? It's a contradiction in term. We want, our representatives to be accessible, and she literally was at a supermarket. You can't get more accessible than that. My friends in Arizona tell me she was always the one that, you could walk in her office and meet with the congresswoman. She would do these things on a very regular basis. They're going to continue to do that, but it's always in the back of their minds.
Another huge story, but for much different reasons, the Anthony Weiner scandal.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
If you remember in the movie Patton, at the very ending, he gives a narrative that he talks about the Roman emperors when they would conquer a country, they'd be in a parade and they'd be going through, they'd have a slave whispering in their ear that all glory is fleeting. I think that's applicable today. Anthony Weiner was seen as a star of the Democratic Party. They used him as a spokesperson to rebut a lot of Republican points, all over the country, et cetera, and he fell from grace so quick. And he had such a perfect life. Gorgeous wife, baby on the way. His wife had a big career with the Secretary of State. It was phenomenal.
Yeah. Occupy protests. Obviously, this has been a huge headline for the second half of the year. What do you think we're going to take away from these Occupy protests? A lot of people have mixed feelings on these protests.
Well, clearly it doesn't look like they're going to go away. And again, you've seen it nationally, you've seen it locally, you've seen it internationally. So I think what you're seeing, of course, I have different opinions than those folks, but clearly what that is showing is that there is a frustration out there, and it is growing. I think it's interesting that they're going off on different tangents on different social issues that I think is going to dilute and have people shy away from them. But if they keep on their original theme of something's wrong with this country as far as the corporate structure, I think the protests will probably grow in 2012.
Yeah, don't you think the strength of their message, though, is that they haven't pinpointed exactly what they stand for, so people can't editorialize or take shots at them? They have been kind of dispersed in what they're going after.
Well, no, I think that's a double-edged sword. You bring up a great point, but on the other hand, you have some people that if they had more specific point, maybe would be on their side that don't. So you're absolutely right. Those are two different edges of the sword.
John, we only have about 30 seconds, so I want to get to this real fast. Locally, pension reform, we talk about pension, gosh, almost every day in this city right now, pension reform, I should say, and it's going to be on the ballot for 2012. How big is this?
Huge. Huge. It's going to be a big issue in and of itself, and of course, it's on the June ballot, so it'll also overshadow and affect the mayor's race, because those candidates, several have taken different positions on it. So the big story of 2011 is the fact that it qualified. 2012 is the fact whether or not it passes. It's going to have repercussions, because it's going to have repercussions across the country if it passes.
What's the important thing that it's on the June ballot instead of the November ballot?
Well, because, again, a lot of people that might feel passionate about just that issue that perhaps maybe wouldn't have gone to the booth to vote for mayor, they'll be there. So I think that'll bump the turnout in the city of San Diego because of that issue.
All right. John Dadian, thank you so much. Covered a lot of ground this morning. We appreciate you
Always
coming
good to see you.